Hello everyone, it's the Agnosticator once again. So I thought today that I would do the political compass test. I've seen a lot of people do it on YouTube. I did it on the other project I'm working on with my best friend, Commoner's podcast, and that was fun. But just to give you guys where I fall on the political spectrum in that 4 quadrants, it's really interesting. It's only about maybe a 60 question test, and it kind of shows you where you fall on the libertarian versus authoritarian and left versus right axis. So I thought we'd take the test. So here it is. This is page 1 out of 6, just a few propositions to start with concerning how you see the country and the world. Question 1. If economic globalization is inevitable, it should primarily serve humanity rather than the interests of transnational corporations. I think it goes without saying that I strongly agree with that. Anybody who thinks that we should place the interests of corporations over humanity as a whole, you have your priorities way out of whack. I'd always support my country whether it was right or wrong. I strongly disagree. I am a vocal opponent of many of the things that my country does. So, no, you're not right by definition. Nobody is right by definition. That is an incredibly unprincipled stance to take. No one chooses his or her country of birth, so it's foolish to be proud of it. I would tend to agree with that because being proud of the fact that you were born somewhere, it seems just kind of like the luck of the genetic draw. You can be proud of your country, but it just seems kind of worthless to be proud of being born somewhere, like you didn't do anything to earn it. Our race has many superior... Okay, no, I'm not even going to finish reading that one. The enemy of my enemy is my friend. I slightly agree. Not in person. In my personal life, I wouldn't say this. But I do think that when you're dealing with international politics in particular, sometimes you have to apply the principle of realism and understand that sometimes, in some limited circumstances, you need to, the enemy of your enemy would be your friend. Military action that defies international law is sometimes justified. Strongly disagree. You don't need to look any further than the Iraq and Afghanistan wars to understand that. The reason that that international law is in place is to make sure that we don't get into wars like Iraq. And defying international law is why we're in the quagmire that we have now. You could even argue it's why ISIS exists, or at least why ISIS is as strong as it is now. There is now a worrying fusion of information and entertainment. I strongly agree, although I would also put the caveat on there that I'm more worried about, instead of the entertainment factor, it being a fusion of opinion and information. You look at most mainstream news outlets now, and they're pushing their opinion on you. They're more editorializing than reporting the facts, and I think that's terrible. If you want to report the facts in an entertaining fashion, fine, but just make sure they're the facts. I just don't want your opinion tainting the information that you're giving me. Next page. Now the economy, we're talking attitudes here. People are ultimately divided more by class than by nationality. I would tend to agree with that, at least in the context of the United States, because we don't really have a ethnic nationality of Americanism. I'd say that there are bigger differences between people of different socioeconomic class than by nationality. I mean, I'm a white man, so maybe I have no idea, but that just is a general sense I get. I feel like I have more in common with somebody who is poor as shit like myself than I do with the owners of my company who, make tons of money. Controlling inflation is more important than controlling unemployment. I'm not an economist, but I would tend to disagree. I think that people need jobs. I don't know, though. Like I said, I'm not an economist, so I don't really have an opinion here. Because corporations cannot be trusted to voluntarily protect the environment, they require regulation. Strongly agree. That pretty much goes without saying. From each according to his ability to each according to his need is a fundamentally good idea. I slightly agree with this. In principle, I think it's a good idea. in principle, I think that is how society ought to run, but people aren't perfect. So when you try to implement a perfectionist or an idealist system on imperfect people, you get bad results. So in reality, in real life, whenever it's been, or anybody's tried to implement this, it's failed. But when you get down to it, fundamentally, the idea itself is good. It's just that the implementation has always failed. It's a sad reflection on society that something as basic as drinking water is now now a bottled, branded consumer product. I would tend to slightly disagree with that. As long as free water is available to everybody, I don't really have a problem with the market putting a price on a bottled water. If you're an idiot and you want to pay $4 for a bottle of water that is literally coming out of the same tap as the water I'm drinking, fine. As long as there's free water, free clean water for everybody available. If you want to make the rich pay for their water, I don't care. That's fine. I don't pay out the nose for water. I get it for free. Land shouldn't be a commodity to be bought and sold. I disagree with that. Actually, I would strongly disagree with that. I have nothing in principle wrong with the idea of land ownership as long as it's not concentrated towards the wealthy. Or like a feudal system, right? But, look, if I own a piece of land and I want to sell it, or somebody owns a piece of land and wants to sell it to me, I have no problem with that. It is regrettable that many personal fortunes are made by people who simply manipulate money and contribute nothing to their society. I would agree with that. Obviously, there's an investor class that does exactly this. And it's hard to say that they actually work for their money. They take money that they already have or inherited or whatever. And I'm talking about people who inherited it. If it's somebody who really worked their way up from their bootstraps and was a savvy investor and makes a ton of money doing that, that's okay. But the people who never earned the money in the first place and just sit on their ass all day and make money off of money that they didn't earn, that's where I have an issue. Protectionism is sometimes necessary in trade. I strongly agree. In fact, I would probably change that to say that protectionism is always necessary in trade. You look at the issues that we have with the working class in the United States. The Democratic Party, the liberals in the United States, have become a party of professionals and of the elites, which we never were in the past. We've always been a party of the working man, or at least since FDR, we were a party of the working man. New Deal Democrats, that's what we need now. And protectionism is always necessary in trade. Because if you don't, you're going to lose jobs. It's just, that's what's going to happen. And it's going to be detrimental to your people. You always need to be looking out for your best interest before making any sort of trade deals. The only social responsibility of a company should be to deliver profit to its shareholders. Strongly disagree. The rich are too highly taxed. Again, I strongly disagree. Those with the ability to pay should have access to higher standards of medical care. I strongly disagree with that. I think medical care should be a fundamental right of all humans. I don't think it should be necessary to pay for higher quality medical care. I think everybody should have the same level. It's a bizarre attitude to have that we pay taxes for roads, we pay taxes for the fire department and the police, things that are vital to our existence, but we don't pay taxes to subsidize healthcare. It blows my mind. I don't understand why we have that attitude. And I think it comes from the United States, particularly the United States, the attitude that if you pay more for something, it's better somehow. The quality is better somehow, when we know that's not true. We pay almost twice as much as any other country when it comes to our GDP, as a proportion of our GDP for healthcare, but we get middling to average results compared with other countries. So no, I don't think that it should even be necessary for you to pay more to get a higher standard of care. Governments should penalize businesses that mislead the public. I strongly agree. I saw some old school ads a couple of weeks ago. I don't know, I was reading them, where literally somebody was advertising butter by saying that it would make you more regular because it would grease your insides. Obviously, there's no factual basis to that whatsoever, but they just put it in there because they're trying to sell their product. And that's what they will do because they don't care about you. They care about their profits. That's it. So yes, companies require regulation. It's just I don't know how you can argue against that. A genuine free market requires restrictions on the ability of predator multinationals to create monopolies. Strongly agree with that. The freer the market, the freer the people. I would agree. Yeah, I guess I would slightly agree with that, because when you do have a free market, I mean, you see that there is more freedom in places like China now, that they have been opening their markets, or Cuba, when they've been opening the markets. I don't believe in a completely managed economy, but there do need to be regulations and safeguards in place so that the wealth does not concentrate to the top. You need a fair and balanced tax system and robust social programs to make sure that while you have a free market, basically it's social democracy, right? You have a free market, but then you also take care of people who need to be taken care of the most, so that you don't have insane levels of inequality like you've seen in the past. Next page. Personal social values. Abortion, when the woman's life is not threatened, should always be illegal. Disagree. Actually, I strongly disagree with that. I think that abortion should be legal but not necessary. You should have access to such high-quality health care that you don't even have to worry about an abortion, because you'll have birth control. It should be something that's obsolete only in cases like the life of the mother is threatened, or rape or incest, or things like that. Because honestly, there is no need for it. We have the technology to make it an obsolete practice. We really do. But we don't invest in it. All authority should be questioned. Strongly agree. I'm an atheist, so I question authority all the way up to the top. An eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. I would disagree with that. That is my natural inclination when anybody does anything wrong to me. But on principle, I disagree. Taxpayers should not be expected to prop up any theaters or museums that cannot survive on a commercial basis. I strongly disagree. I think there's great value in investing in the arts and culture. Schools should not make classroom attendance compulsory. Strongly disagree. All people have their rights, but it's better for all of us that different sorts of people should keep to their own kind. Strongly disagree. Good parents sometimes have to spank their children. I'll agree with that. Now, I'm a little bit more nuanced on this. I don't spank my own kids, but I could see when it would be appropriate to do that. I just don't think it should ever be done out of anger. Your kids should never be fearful of you when you're punishing them. Your punishment should always be done out of love. It's natural for children to keep some secrets from their parents. Strongly agree. I kept plenty of secrets from my parents. In fact, I haven't told them I'm an atheist. So, yes, children should keep secrets from their parents. Very natural. Possessing marijuana for personal use should not be a criminal offense. Strongly agree. Actually, the state I live in just legalized it in the last election, which I'm very excited about. People should be allowed to put into their body whatever they want as long as it's not hurting anybody else, especially when it comes to medical marijuana, because we know it's fairly safe compared to what else people can be putting in. I mean, look at the opioid crisis. If you legalize marijuana across the board, I'm a firm believer that you wouldn't see nearly as many opioid and opiate overdoses. The prime function of schooling should be to equip the future generation to find jobs. Disagree. Strongly disagree. I believe in education for education's sake. I don't think that there's any downside to having a liberal arts education. While it might not make you employable or as employable as somebody else, I think that it should. This is why I'm such an advocate of free college, is that it opens your mind to new perspectives, and that's always a good thing. Although, I will say, there's a worrying trend in higher education now that is moving away from that principle, away from it being a virtue to be in somewhere where your ideas are challenged. I'm talking about safe spaces and liberals who feel like they need to limit other people's speech because it's offensive, or telling Milo Yiannopoulos that you can't come talk and burning things down to the ground because you don't want Milo to talk. So, yes, I think that universities are heading in a bad direction, but on principle, I would say that education should never be only about equipping you for a job. It should be about enriching you as a person. People with serious inheritable disabilities should not be allowed to reproduce. Okay, strongly disagree. The most important thing for children to learn is to accept discipline. Again, I strongly disagree. I strongly disagree. If you raise kids to only listen to you because they're afraid that you're going to discipline them, you're raising children who will be adults that accept all sorts of authoritarianism, right? Well, I'm not going to like it if my child questions my authority, right? And I probably will punish them for it. I don't ever want them to listen to me because they're afraid that I'm going to discipline them. I want them to listen to me because, there's a mutual love and respect. I mean, maybe that's a little bit too idealistic, but there are no savage and civilized peoples. There are only different cultures, and actually I strongly disagree with this. I'm not one who would say that the values of every culture are equal, and that might not go over well in progressive circles, but it's what I think. You cannot convince me that a culture that accepts stoning a woman for having sex outside of marriage is equal to one in which you allow them to deal with the consequences of it, but you don't kill them for it. Those two are not equal. They're not even comparable. Those who are able to work and refuse the opportunity should not expect society's support. I disagree with that, but only slightly. When you are troubled, it's better not to think about it, but to keep busy with more cheerful things. Strongly disagree. That's just stupid. First-generation immigrants can never be fully integrated within their new country. Strongly disagree. I know first-generation immigrants who are fully integrated into this country. What's good for the most successful corporations is always ultimately good for all of us. Strongly disagree. No broadcasting institution, however independent its content, should receive public funding. Again, I strongly disagree. Next page. And how you see wider society. Our civil liberties are being excessively curbed in the name of counterterrorism. Strongly agree. You don't need to look any further than the CIA leaks that just happened, the Vault 7 leaks, but I mean, they literally can spy on us through our smart TVs. A significant advantage of a one-party state is that it avoids all arguments that delay progress in a democratic political system. Strongly disagree. That's just an authoritarian dictatorship. Although the electronic age makes official surveillance easier, only wrongdoers need to be worried. Again, look at the CIA leaks. If you are not worried that the government can do what it can and access the type of information that it can, then I think you have your head up your ass, essentially. The idea that only wrongdoers need to be worried is ridiculous. If one person's rights are violated in this area, it violates everyone's rights. The death penalty should be an option for the most serious crimes. I strongly disagree. I don't think that the state should have authority to kill its own citizens. In a civilized society, one must always have people above to be obeyed and people below to be commanded. Okay, I slightly agree with that because you do need an ordered society. I mean, you do have to have a government in charge. Abstract art that doesn't represent anything shouldn't be considered art at all. I would agree with that. I'm not a fan of modern art. In criminal justice, punishment should be more important than rehabilitation. I strongly disagree. If you look at countries in which they prioritize rehabilitation, their results are way better than the United States. They have fewer people per capita in prison, and their recidivism rate, which is the rate at which people commit crimes after being released from prison, is way lower than the United States. It's much more important to focus on rehabilitation than it is on punishment. Focusing on punishment just creates career criminals, essentially. It is a waste of time to try to rehabilitate some criminals. I strongly disagree. You always have to make the effort. Each person is a human being with dignity, and they need to be treated as such. The business person and the manufacturer are more important than the writer and the artist. Strongly disagree. That goes without saying. That's a ridiculous thing. Mothers may have careers, but their first duty is to be homemakers. Strongly disagree. Their first duty is to do what makes them happy, to be honest. Multinational companies are unethically exploiting the plant genetic resources of developing countries. Yes, I strongly agree. Making peace with the establishment is an important aspect of maturity. I strongly disagree. I don't think that you should accept the establishment and the status quo just because of use in old age. If you're not fighting against it, you're basically just giving up. It's not an aspect of maturity. It's just an aspect of complacence. If you got through that okay, you'll find these propositions on religion a breeze. Astrology accurately explains many things. Strongly disagree. Do I even need to explain that? You cannot be moral without being religious. Again, strongly disagree. Charity is better than Social Security as a means of helping the genuinely disadvantaged. Strongly disagree, because charity is not impartial. When you're relying on things like churches to hand out care, basically in the United States, a lot of times they're allowed to discriminate. So no, Social Security is much better. Some people are naturally unlucky. Strongly disagree. It is important that my child's school instills religious values. Well, I'm an atheist, so no, I strongly disagree. Finally, a look at sex. Sex outside marriage is usually immoral. Strongly disagree. A same-sex couple in a stable, loving relationship should not be excluded from the possibility of child adoption. Strongly agree. Pornography depicting consenting adults should be legal for the adult population. Yes, I strongly agree. What's going on in a private bedroom between consenting adults is no business of the state. Strongly agree. I can't even imagine what type of person would answer no on that question. Right? Like, why? How can you disagree with that? Unless you're like Ted Cruz or something. No one can feel naturally homosexual. I strongly disagree with that. I've known plenty of gay people, and they naturally feel that way. That it's not even really a debate. These days, openness is about sex has gone too far. Disagree. Now let's see where you stand. Check it out. Okay, so this is explaining it. This is on the economic scale, the left to the right, and authoritarian. The social scale is authoritarian to libertarian. So let's see where I am. So Hitler is up here in the authoritarian right with Thatcher. Stalin is authoritarian left. Gandhi is a libertarian left, and Friedman is libertarian right. Let's see where I am. Ooh, look at that. Way the hell down there. So yeah, I'm a libertarian leftist. Very much so. A little bit more libertarian than leftist, though. So, Bernie Sanders would be somewhat towards the middle of that graph. So I'm further to the left than him. I'm off the spectrum to the left in the United States. But yeah, that's where I fall. And I think anybody who's listened to my podcast or any of my videos would sort of have been able to predict that anyway. But yeah, I'll put a link in the description to this test. Go ahead and take it yourself. Comment with your results. If you think any of the things that I said in here were stupid, or I answered these questions wrong, or you think I'm an idiot, also put that in the comments. If you like the video, hit the like button, and I'll do more like this in the future. Subscribe to this channel, because like I said earlier, I'm planning on putting a video out here probably 2 to 3 times per week now. So if you want to see me any more than you do now, subscribe.